The millionaire teased the black girl. If you can heal me, I'll give you $1 million. She touched him, and the impossible happened. What a cute little game, kids playing, Dr. Arthur Thornton sneered, adjusting his sunglasses as he watched from the seat of his custom Rolls Royce. I bet she doesn't even know what a real stethoscope looks like. The park was crowded on a sunny Saturday afternoon. A group of children from the neighborhood were playing hospital using sticks as medical instruments and leaves as prescriptions. Arthur had stopped only because his driver had to fix a mechanical issue. Yet the sight of the kids healing each other with such solemnity intrigued him and somehow irritated him. At 53, Arthur Thornton was the kind of man who turned personal tragedy into bitterness toward the world. 5 years ago, a stroke had confined him to a wheelchair, but it only seemed to heighten his arrogance. As the heir to a $400 million real estate empire, he used his disability as a justification to demean those he considered inferior. Hey, you, he shouted at a girl of about 10 standing slightly apart from the group quietly observing. She was black, wearing a simple dress, and her eyes held a fire that made Arthur uncomfortable. Why aren't you playing with your imaginary friends? The girl Zuri walked slowly toward the park fence. She showed no fear, no intimidation, just a calm curiosity that unsettled Arthur. This isn't imagination, she said firmly. This is belief. Arthur laughed loudly, drawing the attention of passers-by. Belief, huh? Well, I have an offer you can't refuse. Listen, he said, pointing to his motionless legs. I've been paralyzed for 5 years. The best doctors in the country gave up. If you really believe in this healing by belief thing, I'll give you $1 million if you get me walking again. People began to gather, some discreetly taking photos with their phones. Arthur loved the attention, especially when he could publicly humiliate someone. $1 million, he repeated, pulling out his wallet and waving a few $100 bills, cash right in front of everyone. So, little doctor, what do you say? Zuri studied his face for a long moment as if reading something invisible in his expression. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she smiled, not a childlike or fearful smile, but a profound, knowing one. Take the money, she said simply. The crowd murmured, a few forced laughs breaking out. Arthur felt a strange unease but quickly dismissed it. Just a child being cheeky. All right, he said, clapping his hands. Let's begin. Let's show everyone how your belief works. Zuri strolled up to his wheelchair, placing her small hand on his right knee and closing her eyes. Seconds passed, and nothing happened except the tense silence of the crowd. Then Arthur felt something he hadn't felt in 5 years, a faint, almost imperceptible tingling running down his leg. His eyes widened, but before he could process it, Zuri opened her eyes and stepped back. That's it? He asked, trying to laugh. That's your big miracle. But as he spoke, the tingling intensified, and for the first time since the stroke, Arthur Thornton felt his toes move inside his $3,000 Italian shoes. The mocking expression on his face slowly vanished, replaced by panic and sheer astonishment. If this girl could truly do the impossible, it meant his entire worldview was about to collapse. And from the determination in Zuri's eyes, that was exactly what she intended. 3 hours later, Arthur Thornton was locked in his penthouse, pacing unsteadily. His legs shook like a toddler learning to walk, but they worked. For the first time in 5 years, he stood. No way, he muttered, clutching the furniture for balance. Placebo effect, adrenaline, slow neural response. He had sent his driver away, returning home in absolute silence, refusing to process what had really happened in the park. But now, alone with his miraculously working legs, he could no longer deny reality. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Thornton, this is Dr. Harrison. You requested an urgent visit. Dr. Michael Harrison had been Arthur's private neurologist for 3 years and was one of the top specialists in spinal injuries. When he arrived and saw his patient walking toward the door, he nearly dropped his medical bag. Arthur, this is extraordinary. How could a child touch me? Arthur said flatly, like giving a weather report. A black girl in the park. She put her hand on my leg, and now I'm walking. Explain it scientifically. Dr. Harrison ran every test possible: reflexes, sensation, strength, MRI. All indicated neurological recovery beyond any explanation for Arthur's type of injury. In 40 years of practice, I've never seen anything like this, the doctor admitted, putting away his equipment. Your spinal cord was severely damaged. This shouldn't happen. After the doctor left, Arthur stood in his bathroom mirror, staring at his reflection for several minutes. He didn't feel gratitude, only profound confusion. His worldview, built on absolute logic and intellectual superiority, had been shattered by a 10-year-old girl. Who is that girl? He asked the empty room. The next morning, Arthur returned to the park, this time walking on his own. Wearing sunglasses and a hat, he tried to blend into the crowd. He observed from a distance until he saw Zuri alone on the path leading to the playground. She wore the same simple dress as the day before, old shoes and a patched backpack. She sat on the bench where she had watched him pulling an old book from her bag, Astronomy for Beginners. Arthur approached slowly. "So you really did it, didn't you?" Zuri lifted her head from the book, not appearing surprised. "Are you here to thank me?" "No," he said, sitting beside her, something he had never done before. Sitting beside a poor child in a public park. "How did you do it?" he asked. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try to surprise me." Zuri closed the book and looked him straight in the eyes. "Some bring light, some bring darkness. You bring both, that's why you could do it." Arthur forced a bitter laugh. "Light and darkness. What kind of mystical nonsense is this? I'm a businessman, girl. I only believe in facts." "Okay," she said, reopening the book. "Then consider this a fact. You can walk. Does that make you treat people differently?" The question hit him like a punch. "Why should I change? I'm still me." "Exactly," she replied simply. The way she spoke made Arthur feel exposed and uncomfortable. In the days that followed, he delved deeply into Zuri's life. He hired a private investigator and uncovered alarming details. Zuri Washington, 10 years old, lived with her grandmother in a dilapidated housing complex on the outskirts of the city. Her father had died in a workplace accident 2 years prior, and her mother worked 3 jobs to support the family. But what shocked Arthur the most was when he discovered the address: Riverside Gardens Housing Project, a name he knew all too well. 5 years earlier, Thornton Development had purchased the land once home to modest, yet dignified residences, mostly occupied by working-class Black families. That project had become one of the company's most lucrative urban redevelopment ventures, displacing low-income residents to make way for luxury apartments. Zuri's family had been among those displaced. Through his private investigator, Arthur spoke over the phone. "There's one more thing you need to know. The girl lost her father in an accident on one of my construction sites. James Washington, an electrician, had been killed when a beam collapsed at the Thornton Towers site." Arthur hung up, standing in his office, processing the information. The girl who had healed him was the daughter of the man who died building one of his projects, a family he had evicted to increase profits, and she knew it. From the look in her eyes that day at the park, she knew exactly who he was. That night, Arthur could not sleep. He paced the apartment, an act that still amazed him, trying to understand why Zuri had helped him. Why would a child with every reason to hate him choose to heal him? The answer came as a memory, one that left him unsettled. When she touched his leg in the park for a fleeting moment, he felt something beyond the physical numbness. He felt her pain, the grief of losing her father, the anguish of watching her family displace, the struggle of growing up in a world that treated her as invisible. And even carrying all that pain, she chose to heal rather than harm. For the first time in many years, Arthur Thornton looked into a moral mirror, reflecting not the successful man he thought himself to be, but the empty cruelty he had become. And the irony was devastating. The only person who had ever shown him true compassion was the one he had hurt the most. But that extraordinary girl had no idea that Arthur Thornton had never learned to confront emotional debts. And a debt of this magnitude demanded a repayment capable of changing both their lives forever. Over the next 2 weeks, Arthur became obsessed not with wealth or power, which had always defined him, but with an urgent need to fully comprehend the damage he had inflicted on the Washington family. He secretly hired a team of investigators not to follow Zuri this time, but to map out every consequence of his business decisions over the past 10 years. Reports arrived daily, each one more devastating than the last. Mr. Thornton Margaret Chun, the social investigator he had hired, entered his office carrying a thick folder. "We've completed our survey of the families displaced by the Riverside Gardens project. There are 342 families, 187 people directly affected." Arthur flipped through the documents, seeing faces for the first time instead of numbers on a spreadsheet. Children forced to change schools, elderly residents losing homes they had occupied for decades, family-run small businesses destroyed overnight. And what about James Washington's accident on the job? Margaret hesitated. It was worse than the official report. 4 safety violations had been recorded on the site that week. The subcontractor was chosen because it was 40% cheaper than competitors, despite a suspicious accident record, Margaret continued. Go on. James Washington reported structural issues 3 days before the accident. His report was filed away without investigation. He died trying to fix a problem that could have been prevented if anyone had listened to his concerns. Arthur closed his eyes. Where is that report now stored in the construction company's system? But there's one more thing you need to know. After Mr. Washington died, his wife tried to sue the company. The attorney she obtained was persuaded to drop the case. Persuaded how Margaret slid a recording across the desk. Your legal department offered the lawyer a lucrative contract with Thornton Corporation on the condition that he drop the Washington case. He agreed. The voice on the recording was unmistakably David Harrison, Arthur's trusted general counsel for 15 years. Arthur listened in horror as the man he trusted coldly negotiated to ensure a widow and her daughter would never see justice. I need copies of all these documents, Arthur said, his voice low. And I want to speak with Mrs. Washington. Sir, she works 3 jobs, morning shifts at the city hospital, days and a restaurant nights, caring for the elderly. It's hard to find a time when she's available. Arthur rose, walking to the window of his 40th floor office. Below the city sprawled like a chessboard, where he once considered himself the king. Now he realized he was nothing more than a pawn in a far larger game, a game where his victories had cost the rights and futures of hundreds of families. Margaret, I need you to arrange a meeting. Not in an office, not in a formal setting, but somewhere she feels comfortable. And when I say need, I don't just mean professionally, I mean humanly. 3 days later, Arthur sat in a modest diner in the neighborhood where Zuri lived. He wore jeans, a cotton shirt, and sneakers, trying to look less intimidating. Still, he felt completely out of place. Maya Washington walked in. Arthur recognized her immediately. Her eyes held the same intensity as her daughter's, but her face bore the marks of someone who had endured far more than she should have. At 32, she looked 40, exhaustion etched into every line. You're the one who... She began, sitting down across from him, hesitating slightly. Who healed the little girl? Yes, Arthur said, extending his hand, and she gave him a brief handshake. Mrs. Washington, I know this may sound strange, but I need to talk about your husband. Maya stiffened. James has been gone for 2 years. There's nothing left to discuss. Yes, because I must take responsibility for his death. Silence settled over the diner like a heavy fog. Maya studied his face, looking for signs of cruelty or manipulation. All she saw was painful honesty. My company cut safety costs at the site where he worked. My lawyers bought the silence of their legal representatives. Finance calculated that paying fines was cheaper than investing in proper equipment. Every word I speak is like shards of broken glass. I killed your husband out of greed and stole your chance at justice. Maya didn't cry. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. Why are you only saying this now? Because your daughter reminded me of something I had completely forgotten, that goodness still exists in the world. And I cannot carry that goodness, alongside the weight of the injustice I caused your family. Arthur pulled an envelope from his pocket. These are copies of all documents related to James's accident, safety reports, ignored internal memos on cost cuts, recordings from the legal department. Everything. Maya opened the envelope with shaking hands, her eyes quickly scanning the pages. This proves criminal negligence. Yes, and much more, Arthur said, sliding a business card across the table. This is Samantha Torres's number, the best labor attorney in the state. She doesn't work for me. She fights people like me. She's reviewed the entire case and said that you not only have the right to substantial compensation, but the evidence is strong enough for criminal charges. Why, Maya asked, her voice trembling for the first time. Why are you doing this? Arthur thought of Zuri, the way the girl had touched him in the park, the calm certainty in her eyes as she said, take the money. He remembered the miracle she had performed, not just healing his legs, but showing him the path back to the humanity he had lost. Because your daughter taught me that some miracles arrive in the form of second chances, and I will not waste mine. When Maya left the diner an hour later, she carried more than just documents that could change her financial future forever. She carried something far more precious: the confirmation that her husband had been a man of integrity who died trying to protect other workers, and that his death would not be in vain. Arthur remained seated watching her leave through the window. He knew this conversation was only the beginning. He had a list of 342 families to face, 15 years of ruthless decisions to rectify, and an empire built on the suffering of others to rebuild. But for the first time since regaining the ability to walk, he felt truly alive, because he realized that true healing was no longer about walking again. It was about learning to walk the right path. What Arthur didn't know was that Zuri had been watching him from a distance throughout the diner, meeting her eyes shining with something like pride. The person she had chosen to heal was finally beginning to understand that some miracles require more than belief. They require the courage to face the darkness within yourself and the determination to turn it into light for others. 6 months after the diner meeting, the Washington lawsuit against Thornton Corporation erupted in national media. Samantha Torres had transformed the evidence Arthur provided into a fierce legal battle, exposing not only criminal negligence but an entire pattern of systemic corruption in the company. Mr. Thornton David Harrison barged into the office without knocking. Have you lost your mind handing over evidence against your own company? Do you understand what this means? Arthur sat calmly behind his desk, eyes on the television. The headlines were merciless: a real estate empire built on workers' deaths and leaked documents revealing decades of corruption. It means I'm finally doing the right thing, Arthur replied, not taking his eyes off the screen. The right thing, David scoffed bitterly. You've destroyed 15 years of work. Shareholders are panicking, contracts canceled, and authorities have issued search warrants. On TV, Maya Washington appeared on the courthouse steps, surrounded by dozens of other families harmed by Thornton Corporation. Her voice was steady and clear. My husband died because someone decided his life was worth only a few $1,000s in savings. Today, justice has finally arrived. Arthur smiled for the first time in weeks. David, do you remember the report James Washington filed 3 days before he died? The one you said was meaningless and filed away. David's face went pale. You? How could you? I have copies of everything. Every email you sent instructing supervisors to ignore safety violations, every recording of you negotiating silence, every document proving we turned human lives into profit spreadsheets. David slumped against the wall as the reality hit him. You can't do this. I've worked for you 15 years. I followed your orders. My orders were to maximize profits. Your actions chose profit over human lives, and now we all must pay the price. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Thornton, there are federal agents in the lobby. They have a search warrant. Arthur straightened his tie. Send them up. Patricia and David, you'll want to call your lawyers, not the ones you paid off to drop the Washington case. By the way, that recording is now in the hands of the FBI. 2 hours later, Arthur sat in a federal interrogation room, not as a defendant, but as a voluntary witness. He had handed over more than 2,000 pages documenting 15 years of illegal conduct at his company. Mr. Thornton, federal agent Sarah Chun, said this evidence is extraordinary. Do you realize that by providing it, you are essentially destroying your own empire? Agent Chun, do you have children? He asked. She nodded, unsettled by the sudden change in topic. Then you understand there are things more important than money. A 10-year-old girl taught me that. The following week, headlines shifted: real estate tycoon cooperates with federal investigation. Thornton testifies against own executives. David Harrison and 6 other executives were arrested. Fraudulent contracts were voided. Families illegally displaced received millions in compensation. Arthur lost 80% of his wealth to federal fines and restitution. His company was dissolved. His business reputation was destroyed permanently. But when Zuri found him in the park that afternoon, walking slowly among the trees, she saw something different in his eyes. Not the wounded pride of a rich man who had lost money, but the serenity of a man who had finally found peace. You kept your promise, she said, sitting beside him on the bench where it all began. What promise? The promise to make things right. You returned far more than $1 million. You restored dignity to hundreds of families. Arthur looked at his hands. Hands that had once signed contracts destroying lives now used to rebuild what had been broken. I still don't understand how you knew I could change. Zuri smiled for the first time, looking truly like a 10-year-old because the utterly bad never feel guilt, and he had always felt it even when pretending not to. As the sun set over the park, Arthur realized he had discovered something more precious than any fortune: the ability to look in a mirror and see not the man he once was, but the man he could still become. And it had all begun with a little girl who saw light where everyone else, even him, saw only darkness. 2 years later, Arthur Thornton walked through the halls of the Washington Community Center, a modern building erected on the very land where Zuri's old neighborhood once stood. The center now offered free education, health care, and vocational training for over 500 families. Mr. Thornton Maya Washington approached, smiling warmly. The graduation ceremony was about to begin. Arthur nodded, straightened his simple tie. His life was completely different now. He lived in a modest apartment, drove a used car, and volunteered as a consultant for NOS in combating real estate exploitation. He no longer had millions, but for the first time in decades, he slept peacefully. In the auditorium, 23 young people were about to receive certificates in various technical fields. Among them was Zuri, now 12, graduating in basic programming, the youngest student ever admitted to the program. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC announced our valedictorian is Zuri Washington. She walked onto the stage with the calm confidence Arthur remembered from the park. She looked directly at him in the audience before beginning. 2 years ago, I met a man who believed power and money defined his worth. Today, that same man taught me that true wealth comes from how many lives you can positively touch. In the front row, David Harrison watched via prison television feed from his federal sentence, 8 years for corruption and criminal negligence. Other former Thornton Corporation executives faced similar fates: ruined reputations, confiscated assets, destroyed careers. Some people believe in instant miracles, Zuri continued. I believe in transformations that begin with a choice: to be part of the problem or to be part of the solution. After the ceremony, Arthur found Zuri in the community center garden. She was seated on the same type of bench where it all began, reading a neuroscience book. You still haven't explained how you did it, he said, sitting beside her. And you still haven't realized that the explanation doesn't matter, she replied, closing the book. What matters is what you do next. Arthur looked around. Children played on safe playgrounds. Teens learned in fully equipped classrooms. Families accessed opportunities once reserved only for the wealthy. Do you know the irony, he said? I lost $400 million, and yet I've never felt richer. Zuri smiled. Because you finally learned the difference between having money and having value. That night, Arthur received an unexpected call. A journalist from Forbes wanted to write a story about a former executive who had completely changed his life. He politely declined. His new journey needed no spotlight. As he hung up, Arthur gazed out the window of his modest apartment. Across the street, the Washington Community Center sign glowed softly in the darkness. A 10-year-old girl had destroyed his empire to save his soul. And Arthur Thornton finally understood that some miracles do more than heal the body, they heal the consciousness of the sick without them even knowing it. True transformation does not come from reclaiming what we have lost, but from discovering what we never knew we truly needed. If this story of redemption and second chances touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to follow more stories proving it's never too late to start again the right way.